Okay. I'd like to introduce Anna Tippett. She's the lab coordinator and engagement librarian at M. Lewis Salmon Library at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. She is our presenter today and will share information with us about an introduction to college library makerspace with practical tips for any library type. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you. Let me see if I can get this to share my screen. So that button does. Wow, so many options. Okay. Now, can y'all see it? It was asking for permission. Okay.
I made you a co-host. It should work, but let me just make you the host. How's that?
Well, I think it was just my computer being weird.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It wanted me to give permission to Zoom.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yay.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, now it wants me to give it permission to record. I think I did do that. Okay. All right. Hopefully everything is okay with it now. All right. Let me see if I can get my little thing to work. Ah, there it is. All right. So yes, I am Anna Kate Tippett from the Salmon Library at UAH. And then this is my contact information. If anybody would like to, reach out with any questions or anything, I'm always more than happy to talk with other librarians. So kind of briefly what I'm going to talk about is, our makerspace in the library at UAH. I'll give you a little bit of background information about our campus and our library. I'll talk a little bit about our history, how we started our makerspaces and where we're at now. And then I'll talk in detail about what we currently offer for our students and our faculty and staff. And then I'll transition into talking more about how you can take some of what we do and what we have learned along the way and apply it in your library, and then share some resources that might be helpful to anybody that is looking to start a makerspace or is currently working in a makerspace. So first, just a little bit about us. So we are located in Huntsville, Alabama, also known as Rocket City. We have a close history with the space program. We have multiple schools and degrees and areas of study, but we do have a heavy STEM focus in our campus. So we're not a STEM only school, but the majority of our students are in our engineering and science colleges. We have about 8,700 students and 359 full-time faculty alone. And so they are our primary patrons that we're focused on. And then our university is unique in that we do a lot of research. Of course, all universities generally do, but with our university, we're known for all the research that we do. We have 17 research centers on our campus alone. So, and just to kind of give you a little quick idea of where exactly we're located in the US is we're up in the northern part of Alabama, about a couple hours south of Nashville, about 4 to 5 hours northwest of Atlanta. So that is our little place in the world. And then this is a photo of our library, the Salmon Library. So we are the only library on campus at UAH, and this is our only location. It's a nice, pretty large building. We're located sort of in the middle-ish of campus, so we're fairly easy for our students to find. And then we have about 12 full-time faculty librarians, and then we have multiple additional other staff that are all, working to help us do what we do at the library. All right, so now I'll talk about our makerspace specifically. So in the beginning, we started out with separate spaces. So in 2018, we first opened, see if you can see my cursor, this space right here on the left side of the screen. This was our multimedia lab, as we called it. And so in here, we had resources, computers with software, equipment that students could check out to create different types of multimedia projects. So things like videos, presentations, graphics, music, other audio, all sorts of things along those lines we started offering in this space. And then in the spring of 2020, a couple of weeks actually before everything shut down for COVID, we added our makerspace, and that's this photo on the right side of the screen. So this was kind of what you typically envision when you think of makerspaces, with all the different tools and equipment, things like 3D printers, all sorts of things like that. And then in the fall of 2021, my position was created to be a full-time faculty librarian position dedicated specifically to running these spaces, instead of how we'd previously done it, of just adding them to other staff's responsibilities. So these spaces were both kind of put where we had room in the library. And so the location was not great. You know, in real estate, they always say location, location, location. It's the most important thing. So we ended up with both spaces on the second floor of the room. We were at opposite ends of our building. So we had the multimedia lab that was all the way at the front and the makerspace that was all the way at the back. And unfortunately, both spaces kind of blended in with everything around them. I'll go back to our pictures. So the multimedia lab here looked like any of our computer classrooms that we had in the library. We had some signage out front, but it wasn't quite enough to differentiate it from all the other rooms surrounding it that were computer labs. So it didn't stand out too much. And then over here, our makerspace, if you look out the windows and the door, you see these bookshelves. So our back wall, back was the exterior wall of the building. And then all around us was about half of our print collection, which is a fairly decent size. So nobody could really find us until they were right on top of us, unless they were, you know, looking for us specifically. And so I had so many students that would come in for an event or something, and they would just tell us, I didn't know that this was here. And also, our maker spaces are noisy. You know, you've got the tools, you've got the equipment. When there are events going on, you've got people talking. And unfortunately, our second floor of the building is designated as a quiet study area. So we would have all this noise coming out, and it was supposed to be an area with, you know, no talking, totally quiet, just studying and working. We actually did have one noise complaint too last fall about noise coming from us. And so, you know, we had people using these spaces, but we weren't seeing the utilization that we really wanted to see. And we believed a lot of that was probably due to our location. You know, if people didn't know about us, they weren't really finding us. So in the meantime, we had this nice, lovely space, the Information Arcade, that was located on the first floor. So that was this space here. It's basically a big computer lab. And these windows here along the front, they went all along that front wall. They're looking out into our lobby. So it's one of the first things you would see when you walked in the space. But this photo that I took was a typical day for the room. There wasn't much usage of it, maybe a couple people a day. Before COVID, this was a super popular space and high demand. And then of course, COVID changed everything. And the library also added extra laptops that students could check out. So the demand just never came back for it. And I was kind of looking at it from the moment that I started going, I want to put the labs in here. I want to bring both of them here, and I want to be right here front and center. I didn't know if that would ever happen until it did. In the spring of 2023, we had a meeting with the library director, and we decided that it was time to move them. We were going to move them into that space there and combine both of them into one. So we moved 10 of the computers from that information arcade out into another area on the first floor, so students could still access them if they needed to. They're not far from the old space, and the furniture that was there previously was never used. So we weren't really taking anything away from the students. And we have I never see the current computers we have full. So we seem to have a good balance of, you know, demand with the number available. And so over the end of the spring semester and the summer, we worked on getting the space ready for the labs. We did some renovations. We repainted, replaced the old nasty carpet, added some outlets in the floors. We also closed in these old security gates that didn't work and hadn't been used, and added windows so that we could have a little bit more security for our equipment. And then we added some doors to the space. And by mid-August, we were fully reopened, which is about the time we normally open for the fall semester. So this is a photo of the finished space after we got everything, you know, moved in and set up. We're very happy with how it turned out. It's been working out great for us. We were able to fit everything in here that we needed to. So all of the equipment that we had in both spaces was brought down in here. So we didn't lose anything in the move. And we're definitely have been seeing more interest in foot traffic in the space since the move. Um, so as part of that, we went through a rebranding because we were, taking these two existing spaces, we're combining them into one. And so it didn't really make sense to just take one of the names that from the old spaces. Plus, it felt a little generic, and we kind of wanted something a little bit more unique to us, a little bit more, kind of memorable. And also, we realized if we wanted to rename the space, this was the time to do it. So over here on the right side of the screen, you can see a few of the many ideas that we tossed around. We played around with incorporating our mascot, the Chargers, into the name. We played around with doing like an acronym. We really kind of liked something with space because of our connection and history with the space program. But also with the acronym, it meant something that described us. We also played around with shortening the name of the library to SAL and have that be our name. But ultimately, we chose the Multi-Maker Lab. So these are the two versions of our logo that we have with different colors. Our graphic design student worker put this together for us. And with the different colors, we're able to put it on anything we want to just about. And I do put it everywhere that I can. We really like this name. We feel like it's a very good balance of being something kind of new and unique, but also still having that connection to the old spaces for our students that were familiar with those, while still being, a little bit unique just for us. So that's kind of our history and how we got to where we are today. And so now I want to talk in more detail about what it is that we actually do in our makerspace. So everything that we do at the library is for, our students and our faculty and staff. And so, the multi-maker labs were created with this, idea of, contributing to the success of our students, in the classroom, but also beyond as well. And so when we made the decision to move these spaces, we were keeping that in mind as well. How can we better serve our students? Will this move, help us do that better? And so some of the things that we do in order to kind of, contribute to that purpose is by incorporating things in the classroom. So the maker projects, multimedia projects, giving students the opportunity to learn and practice new skills, including those outside what they're learning in class, providing them with access to equipment and resources. And the nice thing about our space is that we're open to all of our students, faculty, and staff. So some of our departments on campus have specialty labs, but they're restricted just to people that are in those departments or just people in certain classes, while we're open to all of the students. We're, open access whenever the lab is open. We prop open both sets of doors and people are able to just come in and work on whatever projects they want to. And along with that, the only real restriction we have on projects is we don't really allow commercial use. But otherwise, it doesn't have to be schoolwork or research. I have students come in that are working on costumes and cosplays. I had one student, he made a Batman cosplay, and then he's been working on one for Ghostbusters. And we just love to see, things like that and see the students be creative. So part of what we do is equipment for checkout. So all of those things we had in the multimedia lab, plus we've added a few other things, are still available. So we have things like cameras, speakers, microphones, drawing tablets, all sorts of stuff. It's totally free for those to be checked out. We just have overdue fines if things are late. But otherwise, there's no charge for these. The only thing that we really do charge is for our 3D and poster printing service, which is something we brought from the Makerspace. And we charge for these things because we provide all the materials for those. So the students don't have to bring, filament or paper or ink for the printer. We take care of all of that. And these are the only service that we have that is totally run by lab staff. So the students bring in their designs, and then we're the ones that get everything ready for it to print and then actually run the device. We have, some restrictions on things we can't print, like again, nothing for commercial purposes, like things that you're just gonna sell, no weapons, nothing copyrighted, things like that. But otherwise, if it doesn't fall into one of those categories, we'll print it for the students. In addition to that, we also have all sorts of equipment available for use in the lab. So this all came down from the Makerspace. The only real item we kind of have a little bit of a restriction on is our Glowforge laser printer. up here in the corner. And that's just because it uses a laser when it's cutting and engraving. And we don't want to burn down the building, and we don't want to release toxic fumes and poison everybody. We want to be safe with it. So we kind of have restrictions on what people can and can't put in it. But otherwise, they're welcome to use it. And all of our other equipment that we have pictured here, the 3D scanner tools, the sewing and bordering machine, the Cricut maker, they can just come in and use those for whatever project that they would like to. We do have some scrap materials that people are welcome to use with all of our equipment, within reason. We don't really want them, using every little bit. But if they want something specific, we generally encourage them to bring their own materials. So we also brought down 10 of the computers from the multimedia lab. So they still have all of the same software on them. So all of the, graphic creation software like Adobe Creative Cloud, audio editing, video editing, all of that is still there. We also added some new programs like CAD programs for creating 3D models. So super great resource. Our students are just able to log on with their UAH email and password, and they get right in. I have 10 total. I have 4 like this of the dual monitors. I personally love the dual monitors. They're my favorite thing. But we also have 2 of the Macs, which is this computer here with this super large monitor. And then I have 4 computers that have a single monitor, and the size is kind of in between these 2 monitors. And again, students are just able to freely come in and use them. Starting this fall semester, we introduced this new initiative called Book a Lab Librarian. So the purpose of this was to make the space more accessible for our students who aren't as familiar with makerspaces or the equipment. They can book one-on-one assistance with either myself or our lab assistant, Logan. And they can get help with a project that they want to work on or that they're in the middle of, or if they want help, learning how to use a piece of equipment or software that we have, this is a way for them to do that and to get that assistance one-on-one. It's a totally free program that we do, and they just schedule it by filling out an online form. So we've had a few people take advantage of it, and we're hoping more people will in the future. So another big part of what we do are events in the Multi-Maker Lab. So these are the ways that, we're helping teach students those new skills that they may not be learning in the classroom. So all of our events are marketed and designed for our students. We keep them open to all. So, faculty and staff are welcome, members of the public are welcome. I'm not checking for like student IDs at the door or anything like that. But when we are planning these, we're doing so with our students in mind. We vary what we do each semester. So we'll feature different equipment, different software, different activities, but there's a key few that we do tend to repeat, and I'm actually going to talk about those in just a moment. And then we'll do different types of events. So we like to do workshops, especially if we can make, some sort of hands-on component. So the students aren't just sitting there listening to us talk. And then also we like to do different crafts and activities for that project-based learning. So they get to do something fun and make something, but they're learning some sort of skill at the same time. And then we'll also do occasionally some relaxation events, especially around midterms and finals, just as a way to give students a chance to kind of be creative and take a mental break from their studying. And hopefully when they go back to their studying, they'll feel a little bit more refreshed and kind of relaxed. So this event, our 3D printing and design for beginners, this is one of those that we repeat generally each semester, once a semester. So it's a pretty simple, easy event. We just use our projector screen, and we have a computer with an internet connection hooked up to it. It costs us nothing to put on. And really for this type of event, you don't even need a 3D printer. As part of it, I'll teach them all the basics of 3D printing, and I'll talk about the different types of printers. So our 3D printers they're different models, but they're all the same type. They're all the FDM type printers. And so I will use, videos that I have of them and photos for, describing those types of printers. But I also include videos and photos of the other types of printers that I just found online. So, you don't have to, if you are interested in doing something like this at your library, you don't have to have a 3D printer to do it. There's tons of videos online. And so also, in addition to learning, kind of all the basics, like what 3D printing is, I'll tell them all about, kind of the different steps involved in 3D printing, how they can print in our lab, and then we do kind of a hands-on demonstration of how to use Tinkercad to create basic models. And so we choose Tinkercad because it's completely free. It's web-based, so they don't have to install anything to use it. And it's good for people that are new to 3D design. It's pretty easy to learn and to practice with. And so usually we get about 10 to 15 people a semester that attend this event. So this was an event that we held this past fall, our Build a Beast. So this is one of those project-based learning activities that we do. So our students were creating these little beasts that had different templates and accessories that they could choose to go on it. And so they would choose what they wanted, and then they were learning the basics of hand sewing as they were creating this if they weren't already familiar with it. So, things like how to thread the needle, how to pin things together, basic stitch for sewing, and then how to finish off. So this event, we had 2 of us that were running it. Really, it would be better with additional helpers. And it cost us about $61 for this event. And so we purchased some, fabric just for this event, and then also some Halloween fabric as well for it. But then a lot of the other stuff we already had in the space. So things like, needles, thread, scissors, all sorts of different things already there. And this was hand sewing, so you don't even need sewing machines if anybody else wanted to do something similar. And so this is an example of an event that we usually do each semester is we do some sort of sewing or hand sewing event. These tend to be some of our most popular events. This was the most popular event we've ever held in the labs. We had 106 people attend. So it was a little overwhelming, but it was also really great at the same time. So this is another event that we like to repeat each semester. So this is our LinkedIn profile pictures event. It's always fairly well attended. All of the equipment that we use for it comes from equipment that we have available for checkout. We did initially have to purchase a neutral backdrop, and we purchased a stand that also came with a green screen in order to start this program, but now those check out too. So it's also kind of an investment in the space. It only cost us, I think, about $70 to order those from Amazon. So super, super easy event. Usually we have 2 to 3 of us running it, which is more than enough. And so basically we take a camera. We use one of our nice ones from the lab that's a DSLR, but you could use a cell phone and it would be perfectly fine. And we set it up on a tripod in front of one of those, the old yearbook photo style with that kind of neutral blue background. And then we just take sort of professional style photos of the students and we email them digital copies. So we don't have to like print anything out. There's none of that cost involved. And I'll usually have printouts with different poses, for examples, if students, aren't sure what they want to do. And then we'll always do one test photo at the beginning where they'll hold a whiteboard with their name on it. So that way I can tell who is who later, because otherwise I wouldn't remember. And we've had students, kind of, suggest we should continue doing this once a semester. And so that is our current plan. We just recently had the event, I think a couple weeks ago. And then we have another one planned for near the end of the spring semester as well. And so this is how we track statistics from our events. So this one over here on the left, this is the one that we use for most of our events. So this is just super simple. We just want to know how many people we had that attended. So they can write their name on the lines. If they just want to, just squiggle something, that's fine too. And then we also, on occasion, will use this other option where we ask for their email. So like this is the one I used for that LinkedIn profile pictures event so that I can email them their files. And also I like to use it for some of the workshops like the 3D printing. So that way, I can send them copies of the slideshow or any other resources that might be helpful after the event. So super easy way to track statistics. We just have them, sign in as they come in. So now I wanted to talk a bit about the classroom inclusion and how exactly that works for us. So, this is one of the main goals that we want to do with our space. So we, want to partner with our faculty so that they can incorporate maker and multimedia learning and projects into their classroom. So if they want to do, that project-based learning type program or type assignments, or something that's kind of like an enhancement to what they're learning in class, or that gives them a chance to practice what they're learning in class, things like that. We definitely want to be able to help them do that. And I will say there's room for improvement in this. We don't have quite as many faculty that are taking advantage of this as we want to. And so that's one of the things that we are working on. So one past partnership that we've had was last fall with the professor in the education department. She wanted to feature 3D printers in her class on teaching the arts in elementary schools. So she was having her students do a STEAM project where they had to 3D print part of this little mouse maze that they were building, and they were using a marble as their mouse to kind of test it out. So she just had the one class, and so they came to us during one of their class periods for about 2 hours. We gave them kind of a tour of the lab and an overview of the 3D printers and other things that we had. The professor took a moment to kind of introduce the project and get them thinking about it. And then we did kind of a hands-on demonstration of Tinkercad again, so that they could get an idea of how they could go about creating their designs for this project. We were hoping to work again together this fall for the same class. Fortunately, scheduling didn't work out, but we are hoping for next fall now. And then I've been working since last fall with a professor in our English department, Dr. Noletto. So she likes to have her honors English classes do a podcast project at the end of the semester as like their final project. So they'll get in groups and they will record and edit a podcast where they discuss concepts and assignments that they've worked on in the class period. So usually for this, I will go visit each of her classes and I spend about 45 minutes with them. And I provide them, with an overview of the lab, the recording studio that we have, and also all of the different equipment and computers that they're able to use that we have. And then I do kind of a more in-depth demonstration of how they can use Audacity to create their podcasts. So this program was chosen by the professor, but I think it was an excellent choice. It's totally free, fairly easy to learn, and it does everything that the students need it to do. Also, I've partnered in this past semester for the first time with another professor in our English department, Dr. Frost. So she's been doing this assignment for years, but this was the first time that she found out about us and wanted to work with us on it, where she has her students either revise or repurpose a research paper that they've written in class and present it in a new format or new genre. So they can choose which one they want to do. But she's had people in the past who have created podcasts. Somebody even made a quilt to repurpose their research paper. So she doesn't really have a limit on what they, can or can't do for it. So they came to visit us during their class period. Again, we did that kind of introduction of everything that we have for them. And then we gave them time to explore and play around with the space. I had different stations set up with equipment and also some computers and tutorials available for different software so that they could kind of play around with things, see what they might want to use to create their projects. So I thought it was a success, and I think Dr. Frost did as well, and I'm hoping to work with her again in the future. And so this I wanted to highlight briefly. This is our LibGuide for this space. So it's kind of like our website. I've got my nice little short, easy to type links to it. This is open for everyone. So anybody is welcome to take a look at this if you want to. There's all sorts of useful, resources and information about us on here. For example, we have a full list of all of the equipment on here that we have for checkout, as well as everything in the lab and resources for different equipment, like, how to create designs for the Glowforge, where you can find materials for that, things like that. Also, I have a tutorial section. So it has links for how to learn to use different software or different equipment that we have. There's also a section just for faculty, which is, trying to promote that classroom inclusion and how we can support that. And then I also have a page about all of our events that we have for each semester. So this is super useful. We always encourage our students to check this. And again, if anybody else would like to look at this, you're more than welcome to. My contact information is also on here as well, It just isn't showing in the screenshot. All right, so now I'm going to talk a bit about how you can take what we're doing and some of the lessons we learned along the way and apply it into your library. So first, kind of what have we learned? Well, first, as we've experienced ourselves, makerspaces are always evolving. So makerspaces in general are as well, but also so is yours. There's always room for improvement somewhere in your makerspace, whether that's making changes to your space or, improvements to it or relocating it like we did, whether that's, replacing equipment as it becomes outdated or no longer works, or just adding new equipment or new services. There's always things that you can change and improve on. And also, there's not one thing that makes a makerspace or makes a space a makerspace. There's not, something that you have to have in order to be considered a makerspace. And this kind of applies to us, but one, thing I like to remind everybody to keep in mind with, trying to start a makerspace is you can dream big, but start small and just, most of all, start. You don't have to go big right away out of the gate. So this is a photo of our makerspace right when we first opened in that spring of 2020. So we started out a lot simpler than what we had before we moved and right now after we've moved. So we only had a few 3D printers. We had a few other pieces of equipment. We didn't have things like our Glowforge yet. We didn't have a lot of the nice furniture that we later purchased. And so it was also a lot barer. And also, if you notice this wall back here, this is where the windows are now. So we didn't put those in right away. We added those later. So it was a lot, kind of more simple, a lot, smaller scale starting out. And then as we went along, we started adding more stuff. So we added additional printers. We added some new furniture, like these nice tables for the printers, other work furniture, nicer cabinets, things like that. And also we added those windows as well. So, we started small and we added on, and of course now we've relocated the spaces and we've, got a little bit bigger. So what, does a makerspace really need? Well, first of all, you need a staff member who, wants to do the makerspace, who has that willingness to learn and to try new things. One thing that I have found with the makerspace is that there's always something new to learn. So also along with that, you'll want some sort of plan. So, what's the purpose of your space? What do you want the space to accomplish? Who's going to be your target audience? So for us, that's our, students, faculty, and staff. For a public library, maybe you're wanting to, target all of your patrons, or maybe just starting out, you want to target just one group. Like maybe you want to just focus on kids to start with, or teens or something, and then add groups later as you grow your makerspace. Totally fine. Also, what sort of services are you going to offer? Are you going to check equipment out? Are you going to do, things like 3D printing? Are people just going to be able to come in and use the space? Are you going to do sort of events and workshops? What is your space going to look like? You'll also want to kind of have, a budget in mind, not just, the short-term startup costs, but long-term as well. So, equipment is going to need repairs. Also, if you're, offering things like 3D printing and poster printing, are you going to provide those materials? You'll want to, kind of keep that in mind of what the cost of those materials are going to be as you go along. And then also, of course, the makerspace, it needs some sort of space. And I put that in quotation marks because space can be a bit flexible. More on that in just a moment. You'll need some sort of equipment in the space. And again, there's not a certain piece of equipment that you need. If you don't want 3D printers, that's totally fine. You can focus more on like doing like sewing stuff or art stuff, whatever you want to do. You'll just need some sort of equipment that's in your space. And then also you'll want some policies in place as well. Who can use it? If you're checking things out, how long can they check things out? All sorts of stuff like that. What can they not do in the space? All along those lines. So coming back to that idea of space, space is flexible. You'll want to choose, what is the best fit for your library. That might mean that you have a room in the library that you can dedicate to your makerspace. If you can, that's great, go for it. Or maybe you don't have a room, maybe, you're a smaller library, but you kind of have an open space or area where you can put your makerspace at. You might want, a cabinet or something where you can lock some of your equipment up if if it's not like open or available for use. Um, but otherwise, that's definitely an option. It doesn't have to be closed off. Or, you can go even smaller and have a cart with your makerspace. So, you can start off with one cart, and, you can always add other carts. Each cart can have its own little theme. And the nice thing about carts is they're small. So you roll them out when you need them, and then you can roll them away and store them elsewhere. Also, you could have like a cabinet where you store all your equipment and then just put whatever you're wanting to use for the makerspace that day on your cart and just take that out. Whatever works for you. You don't have to jump right into doing any renovations or major changes. And you don't even have to do this at all. So whatever fits your library, that's what you'll want to choose. So this was an example of a makerspace cart that I found. So this is from the LaPorte County Public Library System. So they have, I think it's about 12 branches, and they have one of these carts at each of their branches so that all of them are able to offer this makerspace programming. I think there may be a couple of them that have, in addition to this, a room for their makerspace, but at a minimum, all of them have one of these carts. So another thing that we've, kind of learned along the way is the importance of feedback. So, you want to ask your patrons for feedback, but you also want to listen to what they have to say as well. We've also found that it's best to offer multiple ways for patrons to offer you feedback. So we have comment cards that they can fill out and leave for us. We also do surveys, mostly after each of our events. Also, I like to use some of the rolling whiteboards that we have in the building and just put up a quick question on that. But you can use, a chalkboard, you can use a poster board, whatever fits. It's, super easy to do. It doesn't take them usually long to write something real quick on the board. And it's a good way to get, unique feedback on specific questions or services that you might be considering. But also, you want to ask for this feedback, and you want to be open to all of it, including criticism. Now, sometimes that criticism might not be fair, or, really make sense, I guess is kind of what I'm trying to say. Always, listen to the feedback and, kind of think on it, consider it, if it's something that, is legitimate criticism, maybe think about ways that you can improve on that. If it's, not legitimate, then you can dismiss it, but, just accept that you're probably going to get some criticism and just, be open to that and to, listening to your patrons. So this is an example of the whiteboards that we have done. So this one over here on the left was one that I had up for about a couple of weeks when we had our grand opening event after we moved. We had some students in the past who had kind of, asked for other types of filament options, because primarily what we do is PLA. So I looked at our printers, what filament, was kind of comparable cost-wise so that we could, still just charge the same prices, wouldn't have to increase anything. And also, what could our printers, really print with? And so I determined that this PETG and TPU were our best options. And so students just voted on them. And PETG ultimately won. But then after that, I put up this other whiteboard and I just kind of asked, what would you like to see in the lab? I left it open-ended. I wanted people to suggest, all sorts of things, events, services, equipment, whatever they wanted. And I had another vote for TPU come in right here, tying it up again. So we haven't decided what we're going to add just yet. For those of you who aren't familiar with TPU, it is not fun to print with. It is a challenge. So this is one of our little survey sheets that we put out. It's got our QR code and a link to the survey. So it's a super short, simple survey. Our assessment librarian is the one that creates these for all of the library's events. And it takes them maybe 5 minutes to fill out. So this is what the survey looks like when they, pull it up. There is one brief question before here that just asks, did you attend the event? If you say no, then it takes you to this, thank you for taking the survey. But if you say yes, it takes you to this little page. There's 3 questions. They get to, rate our event by sliding this smiley face scale, which our students usually appreciate. And then they can tell us, what comments do you have about today's event? And then also if you have any suggestions for future events. And all of these questions are optional, so they can fill out what they want, what they don't want, and then they just hit next to continue and submit it. And it's a totally anonymous survey as well. So this is just some of the feedback that, we've received in the past regarding events. So we've had a lot of positive feedback like this, it was hype and loved it. We've also received, some negative feedback too, like this comment here, get more supervisors and helpers. So this was in response to a sewing event that we did back in the spring where we made little worry pets. Again, there were just 2 of us that were running the event. And so we did it kind of drop-in style. So we're just kind of trying to wander around and help people as they needed. And so one of our students felt that we needed more, people to help, and I totally agreed with that. So when we did the Build-A-Beast event this fall, we tried to kind of make some improvements because again, it was just the 2 of us doing it. And so I added an instruction video for how to create the beast, and then also a link to another video that was really good about showing how to do all the basics of hand sewing. Wasn't quite enough. We still received, some more feedback that, they needed more instruction and assistance. So we're looking at different ways of how to improve that further when we get to our event in January for the spring. Also, I don't know if y'all noticed this comment right here where it's talking about doing a Build-A-Beast event. So this was also a comment that we received after that Worry Pet event that we did in the spring. And so that was where the idea for the event that we did this fall was born from. One of our students said, you should do this. And I said, okay, we'll do this. And it was a huge success. So also, with makerspaces, sometimes you'll want to get, a little creative with budgeting and funding. So at the Multi-Maker Lab, we're kind of lucky in that we've had a lot of support and buy-in from the library administration. They're super supportive of what we do, and they're willing to help us, get new equipment and things on occasion out of the library budget. We were also fortunate to receive a grant from a company in the Huntsville area called Blue Origin in 2022 that allowed us to purchase some new equipment. So this grant was what allowed us to get the glow forge that we have and the filter for it, along with a couple of other things. Also one of the things that we've had success with is repurposing. So, taking these old spaces, both for the labs in their original locations and our current location, and repurposing them and turning them into, these maker spaces. Also, we had this equipment for faculty, this ETL equipment that we added around the time of COVID that was not getting checked out at all. Like a lot of it was still, brand new in the box. It had only been open to be barcoded, and that was it. So we had things like these really nice drawing tablet monitors, some nice quality USB microphones, some iPads, and those weren't being used. And so we were able to get permission to move some of those into the Multi-Maker Lab. So we added, some new equipment and some additional items, and it didn't cost us anything extra to do that. Also, we've repurposed some equipment from old spaces that we've had as well. So we had a recording studio, an old one. And so we've since upgraded, and we've got a newer one with nicer equipment. And so we had these photo lights in the old one that, they worked, but we didn't have any use for them in there anymore. So we added those as something the students could check out. So again, no extra cost to us, more equipment for the students. And then also furniture. We like to repurpose furniture because it's not always possible to buy new. Our most recent addition was this little short cabinet that I actually just moved in the space last week that nobody was using. It just had a couple things in it, and nobody, I think, had opened it except me in a while. And we needed some storage by our staff desk. So I just took it and moved it in there, and it's been working great. And again, it didn't cost me anything. Some other tips for kind of, keeping the budget low. buy used equipment where you can. You don't have to get the shiniest brand new thing. As long as it still works and it does what you need it to do, used is perfectly fine. Also, look into clearance items. When new models come out, they'll usually mark down the older models. They're still new, they still work. They're just not the newest, but that's fine. Go ahead and get them while they're, at that good deal. Also look into open box items. So a lot of stores like Best Buy, they'll open equipment to put it out on display, but it's still, brand new, not usually used. But because it's, no longer sealed in the box, they'll sell it at a discount when they're ready to replace it with something else. Also, don't be afraid to look into refurbished items. Now, you'll want to make sure that you're buying from like a reputable seller, a refurbisher or company. But otherwise, again, as long as it works and does what you need it to do, that's totally fine. And, that might help you save a little more money or stretch, a budget a little bit further. Also, don't be afraid to look into grants. So these are just kind of some examples of different ones that I found. So these are just some organizations over here. Of course, this isn't complete by any means, but things like the Department of Education, Institute of Museum and Library Services, a lot of these places will offer grants, and some of them are specifically for libraries and or for makerspaces. But also don't be afraid to look at other places too. Try looking at, your federal, state, and local government levels. Maybe they offer grants, or, a local community foundation or council for the arts, local businesses. And if all else fails, just do, some keyword searches, makerspace grant, library grant, things like that. And you may be able to find something that would be super helpful for you.
Anna, you have about 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm about done.
Okay.
So also, keeping again this in mind of, you never stop learning and you learn something new every day. I had a lot of equipment that I had to learn when I first started with UAH. All of it I know kind of the basics of now, but I'm still, learning a lot as I go. So these are some places where you can find, resources for, learning how to use different equipment and software. Look at, the creators or the manufacturers of some of the software and equipment. For example, Adobe Creative Cloud has a lot of tutorials for most of their software, including Photoshop. It's on their website and it's totally free to watch these and use these. Also, a lot of libraries that have makerspaces will offer some sort of, tutorial section. Maybe it's stuff that they've, created themselves, or maybe it's, linking to things that have been made by others. But that's always usually a good place to look, online courses, webinar, YouTube. I love YouTube. I've learned so much from YouTube. You might what you could find on there. Of course, there's always, books. Pinterest usually has some good ideas, blogs. And when all else fails, experiment. Go play with the equipment. That's one of my favorite ways to learn, is just kind of to play around with things and see what all it can do and how I can use it. So this is a screenshot from our LibGuide again. I've got our nice little short link down here. And so these are just some of the tutorials that we have on that LibGuide available. Everything on here, I believe, should be free. And so you can just click on the links and you could go learn how to use all of these different things. So a few kind of final thoughts to wrap things up. Makerspaces offer unique and innovative ways for libraries to serve their communities and fulfill their library's missions. So almost any library can find a way to, incorporate a makerspace into their mission and, find ways that they can use it to, better serve their patrons and fulfill some sort of need in their community. Also, makerspaces are providing access to equipment and resources that your patrons may not otherwise have access to, whether that's due to lack of knowledge, lack of funding, the lack of space for some of the equipment. You're providing that access for them. And also, keeping in mind that idea of, starting small. And don't be afraid to repurpose things that you may have in the library. For example, if you have like a Cricut that your staff uses for, creating displays, you could add that to your makerspace. It wouldn't cost you anything to do it, and your staff would still have access to it when they needed. So these are some kind of resources that I found along the way that, might be helpful for starting a makerspace, finding ideas for one, also for learning how to use this, some more kind of tutorials and things like that. I think I mislabeled this one. Um, these are not books. These are websites with different makerspace ideas and things. But all of the links should be accurate, and I tried to make them, nice and short so they're easier to type in. Um, and then this is something that I just started recently. I've had a couple people request copies of, presentations and things I've done in the past with events. And so I've made this folder. It's available for anyone that would like to access it. If you'll just email me, I can give you the link to it. And so I'm still adding things to it as I go. So like I have copies of like my presentation from the 3D printing and design, everything from the Build-A-Beast, all sorts of things like that. Again, just email me and I will be happy to share this with you if you're interested. And then once again, this is my contact information if anybody would like to get in touch with me. And then I think that's all that I have if we want to open it up for questions.
I would say just unmute yourself and ask the question. That'll be the easier. Oh, there's a question from Jim. Do you have, oops. Do you have other staff for the lab besides yourself? What would the total staff hours, including yourself, per week be approximately?
So I'm the only full-time person devoted to it. Logan, our lab assistant, is part-time, so they usually work, 20 to 25 hours a week. And then we also have about 8 work study students. And so they handle a lot of the kind of day-to-day staffing of the space.
Any other questions, comments? I did put in the chat, I'll do it again, the survey that we're asked you to look at. Anna, can you unshare, stop your share?
Oh, yes, sorry.
No, not a
Just-
problem.
Just a quick question. Do you guys have like waivers for when like people are using the tools, like the machines, does in case of like someone gets injured or anything like that? Like,
No, we haven't, we don't have any waivers. I mean, the closest thing we have is there's a form they fill out to request a 3D print job or a poster print job, but I mean, they're not the ones that are running that, so it doesn't, really, this doesn't have anything about, accepting liability or not.
okay.
We haven't done anything like that and haven't needed anything like that yet, I hope.
Oliver wants to know, what does staff training look like for you?
I mean, it's kind of, I train myself as needed. When I need to learn something new, I'll go to YouTube or look at something online, and just kind of train myself on it. Of course, I train all of our student workers when they first start, on all of our policies, how to check things in and out. And usually I'll at least train them on 3D printing and the Glowforge if that's not something they're familiar with. But otherwise it's, I guess, kind of self-directed by me.
Jim also wants to know, do you have a sound booth or a studio where they can do podcasts, for example?
Yes, we have our recording and presentation practice room, where it's not soundproofed, but we did have a company come in and install acoustic foam sound panels on it, that our students, they can check it out or they can reserve it. And we also have equipment in there as well. So there's microphones, there's a computer, there's lights and a green screen. So they are welcome to use that to do, not just podcasts, but they can do, video and things like that as well.
And Maya, kind of following that along, wants to know, how do you schedule equipment use? Do students drop in, or do you assign times to use tools?
What we've been doing is they just come in and they can use it. With, like our 3D printers, if all of them are full, we just kind of start making a line with our paperwork that they fill out, of whoever came in next. We don't have any reservation systems or anything in place for any of the stuff in the lab, either, things that check out or stuff that they can use. It's just kind of, first come, first served. The only thing that is reservable is that recording and presentation practice room.
Christine wants to know if there are strategies you have in addition to the website to try and get faculty to engage with the space.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. So, every fall we have a new faculty orientation that the university puts on. And so usually we have a couple librarians that'll go. And so I have a couple flyers and things that they can take with kind of suggestions of, different instruction sessions that we can do for them, different projects they might want to do. Also, I'll try to go to new faculty or to any faculty event and try to network with other faculty. Also, each of us in the library have our own subject specialists. We have a few subjects that we are the go-to librarian for. And so, I'm always encouraging all of the other librarians to, include us when they email their faculty at the beginning of each semester and mention us. And I always mention us to my faculty as well. So we are definitely trying to get the word out as best that we can.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Again, you can unmute yourself. I'm watching the chat. Well, you do have Anna's email if you need more help or have questions. Thank you for attending an introduction to the College Library Makerspace with practical tips for any library type. Thank you very much, Anna Tippett, for your presentation, for all your information. We realize you volunteered your time and we really appreciate your time with us. So thank you very much, Anna. We would love to get feedback on today's event. I've put in the chat the link to the survey that we have. We wanted to make, oops, I did something wrong. We wanted to make it sure everybody understood that the reason we asked for these surveys evaluations is because we use this data when we're looking for applying for grant funding. And this group, Library Makers, is entirely grant funded, filled with volunteers. We don't have a budget that we can, say, well, we're getting so much money every year. So they're constantly looking for grant funding and we need data to do that. So and thanks, Ziba, for your link to what you do at your library. I appreciate that. Okay, we hope to see you all at www.librarymakers.org, or you can just type in librarymakers.org, or I just type in Library Makers and I get it. This is a fairly young group, 2019 they were started, but it's growing in leaps and bounds, and it's just an awesome way to share, to have, if you've got questions, if you are looking at buying a new piece of equipment, someone can help you with what they did, how did you do a bid for it, all that kind of stuff. There's just any amount of, it's all self-driven, it's very organic, and so we would recommend passing the word. Our libraries or our website is the community newsfeed and chat, so when you go to the website you can get on and you can just basically chat, blog, whatever. So and again, we mentioned there's a lot of links to resources that you can use, which are very helpful if you're just starting with a makerspace especially, or trying to make it bigger. This is a community created by library people for library people, and there's lots and lots of ideas, as well as mutual support for running a maker program successfully. I guess I'm going to thank everybody so much for being here. We have our webpage on there, and again, Anna, thank you so much for your presentation. There will be an email from you in a day or two that has a link to the recording for this event if you want to share with somebody. Also, there'll be a link to Anna's slides in that email, so you'll be able to access the slides that she used as her presentation. And I want to thank you, everybody. Have a good evening or afternoon, wherever you are. All right. Thanks, Anna. I think that went really, really well.
Well, thank you. I was happy to do it.